All right. This is The Dark Queens by Shelley Puhak. And I don't know how many of you would have picked this book up, but I imagine you're watching this video because you've just read the book. This, for me, is part of my just branching out series. I read the bio on Shelley Puhak. I think it's her last, or her first nonfiction work. I forget. I think she wrote something else that was known. But I read the description of this book, and I was interested by it. This is a medieval Game of Thrones true story. I mean, it is a true story. This is all historical. But the issue with that is there a lot of this history that she writes about, it's so old and there is so little documentation that it's hard to know for sure if the stories or the perspective that Shelley Puhak gives in this book is true. But that's not really why we're reading this. You know, we read this because it's fun, it's Game of Thronesy, it's medieval. For me, what it did was took me away from today's present politics and you name it, anything modern. This transports you, and it's done really well. She did a great job writing it in a way that is a story that unfolds. Even though it's it's historical in nature and nonfiction, she writes it in a way that is beginning, middle, end, and twists and turns. But if you enjoy medieval gruesome conditions, this is a great story about these two really, she describes intentionally written out of history two females. These two females that were around power, but then manipulated their way through gamesmanship and certain killings of their family members to take power, and ruled through the Germanic regions in the medieval times for almost 100 years between the two of them. So it's really an unheard story, other than the fact that they've been represented in Greek theater for or Roman theater for a long time, and operas and I say Roman theater, I mean the post-Roman modern, in time. If you know your history, that doesn't make sense, but if you know what I'm saying, you know. But this is The Dark Queens by Shelley Puhak, and it's an intriguing story of these two queens that take power by basically killing their way there. Brunhild is one, and it's been a while, but I think it's Fredegund. I don't know how to pronounce it, but anyway, my thoughts are pick it up if you like being transported. Don't pick it up if you want, matter of fact, this is true. I'm breezing through it because I kind of read it at the beach and it was a while ago. So, but I remember thinking, wow, that was a wild story. It did drag. I have to be honest, it did drag. It went very much into detail and there was a lot of killing. And for me, it became a little repetitive. But overall, I enjoyed reading through it, other than it just kept going. And it went into a little detail, too much detail in certain areas on other characters that I cared less about. I would have liked for her to focus a little bit narrow on these two queens, but it really focused on their sphere and other people in their sphere for almost entire chapters in some cases. And that wasn't my favorite. But a dark book, a book that takes you away. And it's a great story to know because it teaches you more about the medieval times if you don't know a whole lot about it, but then also just the female angle of it, that potentially there were strong female rulers that reigned for many years, perhaps 100 between the two of these, and you don't hear about them because men rewrote history, according to Shelley Puhak. So kind of interesting to kind of know, and it's fun to talk about with friends and family if they come up in conversation about the medieval times. You can say, hey, do you know about these two queens? Tell them that story. So anyway, thick book, hard read, wouldn't reread it, but fun. And a lesser known book that is really well written. So check it out. The Dark Queens by Shelley Puhak.